Welcome to Thursday number 5 at Move Days 2025. Last week we talked to Dieter Breiteker about intuitive dynamic sitting, the right posture at work. Today we continue with the topic of posture. Andrea Latritsch-Karlbauer is our guest today. She is an expert in body language and successful communication, a successful book author and keynote speaker. And she will take you on a journey today because your success is just one step away. Dear Andrea, please say hello.
Welcome. I am particularly pleased to be an expert at the Move Days, and today I would like to tell you something you may not have heard much about. I have been a body language trainer for a very long time. I originally come from the theater field, worked internationally as an actress for 16 years, and am trained in pantomime. And even then, I realized that when I walk in posture and don't speak, I still tell a lot. After I was originally very afraid of the stage at the very beginning, and it took me a great deal of effort to overcome it, I set out on a search for what makes us strong, what makes us relatable as personalities, what makes us unique. And I would like to tell you in this session at Move Days what will help you feel stronger. In my many years of studying body language, I have come across something fundamental. Namely, the way you walk tells how you are doing. That is, your gait tells your story. Your gait embodies your emotional state in the moment. I didn't realize that for a long time, and I've worked with thousands of people. Through observation, I've noticed, aha, someone walks with their head bowed or stooped over or wobbling from side to side or hovering a bit above the ground. And that has an enormous effect on the overall personality. I have also worked with thousands of young people on self-esteem and have noticed that certain exercises help, and suddenly a shy young person becomes a strong young person who radiates and feels a great sense of self-confidence. That is, the interaction of body and psyche also works, as Michael has already announced. I would now like to share with you an excerpt of what I do in my seminars, and which can also help you. I said to you, walking says how you are. And are you actually aware that you express your emotional state with the word go? I ask you, how's it going? And you might say, I'm fine, or I'm doing badly, or I'm doing so-so. Or you could say, this project is going down the drain, or I've lost the ground under my feet, or I'm making progress step by step, I'm fighting my way back to life. That means not only the way we walk, but also the words we say show how we are doing, and that's where the great potential lies. I'll show you now what possibilities there are for walking. Walking is always associated with fitness or with leaving problems behind. In my coaching sessions, I also do that. I walk with people, and with every step, the problems get smaller. Philosophers already did that, and the monks walked in the colonnades when they had developed some project or new philosophical thoughts. That's when they walked, and I'll show you that in a moment. They left, thought about it, and then they found the solution. Then they said, Eureka, they said, and they stopped. So that means that you can use that for yourself too when you have a task, that you start with this task, that you say, yes, I'll find the solution this way. You start walking, you take one step after the other, and you will notice that ideas start flowing in your head. And when you get an idea, stop. Record it on your cell phone, write it down or whatever. So you flesh out the idea while you're walking. And walking has all kinds of positive effects. And I showed the different dynamics that a gait can have. In my seminars, I repeatedly ask, do you actually know how you walk? I ask the participants, or do you know how you walk? And the participants say, Yes, I hadn't thought about that. And then they say, maybe you could walk around the room and consciously watch your gait. I would like you to do that now. Walk around the room. You can hear my voice too. Try it out and see how you walk. And you will realize that if you think a little harder, you'll come up with a word. For example, some people say they walk breaking. That could look like this. Or some say they are walking, hurrying along. So they walk with their upper body still ahead. Or some people say, I don't know, somehow I feel slowed down and somehow I feel dynamic. They then perhaps walk like this. Then there are those who wobble from side to side when walking. And all these dynamics have an enormous impact on your thought and behavior patterns. Imagine that you have experienced certain things in life and that these things have been recorded in the body. Maybe you had to protect yourself once. Maybe you have a tendency to hunch your shoulders. Or maybe your project failed, or you were once unemployed, or whatever. Then the body takes on this dynamic. So it's like treading water. And you see that in many young people, especially during puberty. You also see it in people who are unemployed or in people who are not sure, who don't know what to do. So like a back and forth wobbling. And you should know that when you have one of these dynamics, you always have an inner voice that has a say in all your decisions. So for example, if you now say, should I take on this project or not? And you have this tendency, then your head will be constantly, yes, no, yes, no. Should I? Shouldn't I? And that I say it is very important to recognize this dynamic to get rid of. Now you will say, yes, but it is my dynamic. That's just the way I am. And many people say, I'm walking like this today. That's me. I say, that's you right now. Because originally when you think of small children or when you are born, you have a dynamic and it is called balance. That means that children are already walking. We are already walking before birth. I don't know if you knew that. We start walking before we are even born. That means that our feet begin to form in the tummy. And as soon as the feet are formed, they look for a surface on the mother's tummy. This provides security. And then we come into the world. And when we start walking, we walk from the center, from the balance. And that is this immediacy, this spontaneity that we humans have. And in the course of life, through education, through experiences and so on, we begin to lose this balance and slip into precisely these dynamics, which do not particularly help us in our professional or private decisions, because there is always, so to speak, a secret prompter speaking. I want to show you, first of all, I would like to offer you a little test. To determine what your dynamics are and whether a lot of stress is involved in all of your hip widths. And I have developed my own stress test for this, and I will ask you now to stand in hip width. So feet are in hip width, toes pointing forward. And now imagine that you are still walking forward. The person who is waiting for you is standing right there, and you are still walking forward. And sense for me which part of the body wants to start moving. It may be that the knees try to start moving, that the knees really give the first impulse to start moving, or the hips. It may also be the hips that the hips try to start moving. It could also be the belly, but women would never do that. It's more likely to be done by men who stick out their bellies when they walk. Women don't do it voluntarily. And you can also start with the rib cage, that you pull the rib cage. You can start with the neck. By the way, many lawyers go for the throat. Then you can also start with the shoulders. We are all familiar with people who walk like that. And as is very common, you can also start walking with your head. The head moves forward first, as I will now demonstrate from the side. The head moves forward and the body follows. And of course, you can start walking with your feet, with the first impulse coming from your feet. Look, stand up and try to really determine from a standing position which part of the body wants to move towards the target. Once you have done that, see if this area, this first impulse, is above the belt or below the belt. So if that's the kind of impetus we're going to see, then you walk around with your stress information. So upper body still forward, chest forward, or neck or shoulders or head. If that still pulls forward, then you are at risk of stress. Well, what are you doing now? I will show you the effect of a gene with a bent upper body. And you can join in and try it out right away, because then you will see what it feels like when you really look consciously. And that is from the front, move forward with the area. For example, if it is your head, you move forward with your head while standing with your feet in balance. Or you go forward with your chest or with your shoulders. And you stand like that for a moment. And now pay attention. What happens when you stand like that? You will notice that your body immediately tenses up and you can no longer breathe properly. And try to feel what thoughts you develop when you do this with your upper body. From the side, it is like that. Or it can be like that, it can be like that. So it can have different characteristics. Look at the thoughts that come into your head when you are standing like that and you have not even acted. You are just standing there. You will notice that your thoughts are no longer free. You are no longer free. You think to yourself, hopefully I won't faint. Oh dear, I have a lot to do. I'm stressed. And so on. These are the effects of this attitude. And you haven't even taken action yet. And if you go now with your upper body still in front, then you take this information into account in all your decisions. This means that you are no longer breathing properly because the information, when we say the body, the upper body communicates with the brain, says the upper body. But then it comes to the brain, hey, I'm about to fall. The brain says, oh, stress, and sends out the stress hormones. And with that, we walk around with the stress hormones all day long. The fatal thing about it is that when you have this attitude, you no longer know when to stop, when you've had enough, when you say, so I need a break now. And of course, in the long run, that's not particularly good for my health or for my mental health. And now I'll show you the resolution of how you should go out so that you really have more energy throughout the day during your work, and so that you also develop a natural sense of your needs and your rhythm of life. And that is, you stand in balance upright and let the foot give the first impulse. That is, the foot still goes forward. You are still standing upright. So you don't start like that, but the foot with the heel comes down on the ground. This gives you a push for a good straightening up. And in the heel is also the information of self-confidence, decision-making power, and the present. So you come up on your heel, your body straightens up, and there is already a lot of energy there. And the moment you roll your foot, your body goes with it, your upper body goes with it. And that is a completely natural movement. That is, I come up with my heel, I roll off. And then comes the next step, and then comes the next step. It is important that you roll over the ball of the foot, over the toes, and then take the next step. And what is particularly important, I always do gait analyses in my individual coaching sessions and also in my company training. That's the first thing I do with people, gait analyses. And the gait analyses actually tell you exactly this point. They tell you how the respective person is doing in life or how they are going through their life. And you can see that a lot of people walk very fast and take very big steps. Big steps. That means big expectations of life, big expectations of oneself, very perfectionist, and at the same time a great fear of failure. And with this step, I'm reinforcing that exact feeling. If the steps are shorter and I roll over the whole foot and up over the toes, then it's like you're saying, I'm deciding on a project, for example. I'll see it through on the ground, I'll see it through to the end. And it is important that I also roll over my toes, because the toes give me the impulse to say, I'm not stopping in the middle of it. I no longer believe in the project. For example, when you are in the ball of your foot. Stops in front, many break in the bail, start dynamically and break in the bail. Then I hold my breath and then I start to doubt before the project is over. That is the self-doubt, I realize, is always very great. And the effect, well, it doesn't just affect my actions or my professional advancement, but it also has an enormous impact on my facial expressions. So when I break, I usually have a great sense of insecurity in my face. For example, I open my eyes or break, or the jaw is tense. So all these things. That's the effect of tamping down my step. So once again, when you start walking, consciously put your heel on the ground, roll over the ball of your foot, over your toes, and then consciously continue walking. And you can walk fast and everything. But a big advantage of it is that you are in the here and now, that you are connected to the things you are doing or telling. And the magic word that arises from this formula, good contact with the ground, good roll-off, is authenticity. Authenticity is when you are connected to what you are asserting or saying in the moment. And when you are not privately wondering whether it is right, because you can see that as a subtitle. So that's it with the walking, a small part of the walking with the stress. If you are already aware of this, then you already have a big advantage. And I would like to recall this small section with a nice story from Buddhism. Namely, a monk walks with his student from one place to the next. Just like the way young people are today, they urge the monk on, saying, you have to go faster, you have to go faster. And the old monk walks quickly, faster than he can. And then they arrive at the village and the old man is leaning against the wall of the house. And the boy then says to him, what's the matter with you? Are you not feeling well? And the monk says, no, 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 I just have to wait for the soul to catch up. So that means that if I always go forward with my head, then I lose my sense of what is important for me and for people too. For example, if I'm a manager, I also lose touch with what people really, really want, and when it's all over. Because the break after a project or after a walk is incredibly important to really wind down again. And that's a good chance for the body and for us to get back into our own rhythm. That means that when our day is very busy and we are rushing around, it is important to slow down, to say, stop, to praise yourself, to say, I did that well. Maybe also to your employees when they have done a good job, you did a good job. That is a good motivator. And then I really take a break. And during the break, shut down the brain, and as the neurobiologists say, the brain can tidy itself up and go for a walk by itself. And that is something that is very important. There are hardly any breaks in our society anymore, especially due to digitalization. We are driven, driven, driven. So here's another tip for you. Walk, saunter, stroll. Dear, use the time walking from one office to the next to relax. Roll off your feet and be happy when you arrive, and then you can move on again. With this in mind, I would also like to recommend my books to you. The first is Haltung, Fertig, Los, Attitude, Ready, Go. Whoever walks wins as you walk. Action determines the second. Long live unreason, the third. And the new will soon appear. Convince without words. I would be happy if one or the other of you took a look, and thank you for your attention. He who walks wins.
Yes, dear Andrea, incredible. There was really a lot that reflected the way you walk, the way you tell us how you are doing. I think this saying will resonate with a great many people. The whole talk somehow also reflected this interplay between movement and soul, between movement and our mental health. If you are now aware of this context, does it also work the other way around? Can I also say, okay, I am now aware of my posture? When I now say, okay, I want to relax now, that I then naturally also consciously take these steps in a decelerated manner, will I then also relax?
Yes, absolutely. The way it is, we know, we think, and the body translates that to the outside world. And at the same time, very few people know that this is done by changing the posture. So if, for example, I consciously change my gait so that suddenly completely different information goes to the brain. That is, if I walk there in a relaxed manner, the brain says, now I can have a nap, now it's relaxed. I don't have to exert myself so much, I can save energy. That means when I really change the posture, it's called embodiment. The mood changes. And if a person, for example, always has their shoulders up, that's a fear amplifier. And if you then show the person, incidentally, this happens when the heel is less on the ground. So when many people are uncertain, they lift their heels off the ground and compensate by pushing their shoulders up. And if they are anxious people, that is a massive factor that amplifies it. And when you consciously know, okay, I'm walking with my heels on the ground, there are good exercises for that. I can show you one, maybe later or when someone comes to me. And then you can let go of your shoulders and you wonder how well it works and how different you feel.
This topic of hunched shoulders and tension in the neck is a very widespread issue among those who work in an office, where tension headaches can, of course, also arise, where this then, of course, manifests itself in the body again, or shoulder tension, neck tension is one of the biggest problems of modern everyday life. There you can also see how we are always directly involved in these things. I think it's important not to look at it in isolation.
There are so many advantages that digitalization and AI bring us, and there are many advantages, but we are in the process of losing our composure in the digitalization. That is, an upright posture represents self-confidence, and I am an upright person. You can never bully me, for example. You can't bully an upright person when they're standing like this, but you can bully someone when they're standing like this. And many young people and adults lose their posture. That is, by constantly looking into some digital media, sticking our heads forward is a stress amplifier, as we have heard, or slumping down is a depression amplifier. And that is why it is important, and that is why the move days are so important, because you show people how to get out of these sitting postures and free themselves again and become freer.
You have raised a very important topic. If you are now on the subway at the bus stops, you hardly see anyone who is not looking at their smartphone and is walking around with this hunched posture. Exactly, if you do it once, it's not a problem, but if it's a habit, then, and of course a hunchback also develops, and you just go through life like that. That is my basic attitude, which I then bring with me. Exactly.
And the basic attitude is one of fear. Lots of young people suffer from depression, and adults too, because everything is focused inwards. That means that I am increasingly cut off from the world. And that is why it is important, for example, to really open your arms or to breathe consciously or to stamp your feet on the ground. This reminds the body. It activates the body's memory and reminds the body to remind the brain of a good balance.
I would like to explore this topic further. I also see tall people again and again who perhaps somehow don't show their height, who also like to come up with something and make themselves smaller. What advice do you have for tall people in particular?
That they stand by their size. I always have to look at it. You can also look down sometimes, but it doesn't work. You can only say yes to yourself and stand by your size and keep imagining that the string is pulling up and I'm straightening up and I'm still staying. Well, that doesn't mean puffing yourself up. A lot of politicians like to do that. That means you have a high chest. the power to show. And that is exactly what separates you from humans. And when a person simply has a natural posture, an upright, well-grounded posture, then everything is right with you. Your gestures and everything are right too.
And then you are in balance. This also applies to muscular balance, so that relaxation occurs and tension does not even have to arise. Exactly. Then I have to come back to the topic of sports. You've talked a lot about walking, but of course, especially during the move days, we have many people who might go hiking in the mountains, or of course runners who are out and about. And when I am out running, for example, on the Prater Hauptallee, I always think to myself, here I am when I am in Vienna, and I always like to go running, and then I look at the running techniques and forms of the runners. What kind of posture do they run with? Can that also be applied to skiing?
Absolutely. Well, I have a hit parade of everyday attitudes where I name people based on their attitudes. For example, the one with his head still in front, the ski jumper just ahead of the posture, for example, or the one who wobbles back and forth with his head forward, tipping point or something. And of course, people take these attitudes with them when they run.
And now I actually want to move around to relieve stress. But if I now go outside with this, when I run in a natural posture, I am signaling the body again.
It's bad for your knees over and over again, faster, further, faster, further. Yet, running can certainly be something that relaxes you. It should be. When I write books, I run. Then I have the best ideas, but I don't run, not the Uhr, but I just run to get some exercise.
Listening to your body is also important.
Yes, exactly. So the main part was just a week ago. And if you look at the people there, the way they walk, well, you couldn't ask for a better comedy movie. They walk with their feet turned out and their shoulders hunched and their faces stern. And they think to themselves, we should maybe do a bit more in sports too, unless you're a racing athlete, of course, or it's something else. But do sports with a certain composure because it has a good effect on the psyche and also on my muscle tension.
Exactly. Yes, so in conclusion, maybe a personal question. You have now told us a little about how you perceive the people around you. You come from a background in acting, you have trained in pantomime, or do you always go through everyday life like that? Can you still switch that off, or are you immediately in this mode of analyzing people and forming an image of them?
So I've stopped doing that in my everyday life when I meet someone privately, because you're crazy if you do that. Because when you analyze a person, it's almost like mind reading. Well, I'm no witch, I'm nothing. I only have body knowledge. I've actually been doing this for a very long time, but I don't do it in my private life. First of all, we say that we just want to meet people and not analyze everyone. But of course, when I'm sitting somewhere and someone has an extreme attitude or an extremely honest attitude, then I have to smile a little and think to myself, well, but I think it's very important. We are judged permanently in society anyway. Everything is always plus, minus, good, bad. And I think we should be a bit more homeopathic in our judgments and not always immediately put people into pigeonholes. So that is also an important credo of mine in my work. Don't judge people based on what you see at first glance, but give them the chance to show themselves differently. And I think that is something our society urgently needs.
Absolutely, absolutely. Dear Andrea, I would like to thank you once again. There were a great many excellent points about employees that can really be adopted in a practical way in everyday life, and that also make you aware of yourself and the impact. You have already presented your new book. I think you have brought us another little surprise.
So if you participate diligently, I will raffle off 2 books of mine. The bestseller Wer geht gewinnt, Whoever Leaves Wins, and the new book, which I hope will also be a bestseller. Convinced Without Words is really red hot and fresh off the press. You can literally still smell the printing ink.
We are happy about that, and we will be happy to raffle it off among the most active. Yes, thank you very much. Thank you very much for joining us again today. There are still a few days left of Move Days. It's still a matter of collecting points diligently, We are almost at the finish line, and I would be very happy if you would join us again next Tuesday. Join us again. See you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.